Well, I remember, getting in the red zone and not being able to push it in. And it's funny because I don't think back and remember the good games. I think back and remember the games in which we came up a little bit short. I guess that's my own mental shortcoming, I suppose. But yeah, it was one of those games, and I remember probably the play that I remember most. It wasn't necessarily the block. I remember not really even watching that, to tell you the truth. I remember when we were on the field, getting ready to march the field, and Ingram lost the only fumble of his career. I remember trying to scramble to get onto it, and it was just too little too late. And it was just one of those crazy games to be a part of. And it's fun being a part of a rivalry that's so historic, and having a small little piece and a small little part of it, and being a part of a team that had a small little part of it is really special.
Greg, as an Alabama player, what does this rivalry with Tennessee mean to you guys leading up to the game?
Well, obviously when I got to school in 2006, Alabama had won in 2005 in a beautiful 6-3 game. Rocky's stop, I believe. You're laughing, Walsh. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, absolutely. The fullback fumble out of the back of the end zone. I digress. But anyways, the rivalry had been dominated by Tennessee, or at least it felt like from an outside observer. So I remember in 2007 when we were able to get our first win, and winning that game, and just the elation, how hard we worked for it, and just how overcome we were, because beating a rival for the first time. We had not beaten Auburn at that point in 5 years, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Hadn't beaten Tennessee since 2005, and I was never a part of that game. So I think this was a big game to me. I wonder how the guys feel about it now. I think it's going to get better. It's going to be back into the forefront, I think, in the very near future, because of what Butch Jones is doing in Knoxville. But I think this is a game that means a lot to a lot of people, and the players recognize that.
What do you think about Tennessee's quarterback, Josh Dobbs?
I like Dobbs a lot. I think he can really throw it. I think there's parts of his game that he's just now starting to become more comfortable doing. Last year, if you look at the game, when he came off the bench first quarter, 8:55 remaining, and he provided a spark. And it's really very noticeable how much the team responds to him. I think his intangibles are what stand out most. His athletic ability is clearly in the forefront naturally on a weekly basis, but I think what you recognize from a quarterback's perspective, all the things he does around playing the position, not just on the field but on the sideline, talking to players, how he carries himself. He's someone I really respect, and I think that he has a tremendous future, and looking forward to following it and covering his career.
This is your first year with SEC Nation. What's it like being back in Tuscaloosa?
Well, it's great. Right now we're in the hotel. I've never been in Tuscaloosa outside of a time or two for a game. My first game ever here was against Hawaii in 2006. I was a player. My first time ever being in the stadium was running out of the tunnel. So I didn't really have that opportunity. So one thing that I've learned this year that's really special about this conference and every particular school is the atmosphere and the traditions leading up to the game. And I think that's one thing that I've really enjoyed and appreciated. And now being in Tuscaloosa, it's of course special to be back. This place means more to me than ever before, and just very grateful to have had the opportunity to have played here several years ago, a long time ago.
What do you think about Alabama's team this year, and specifically what do you think about the quarterback specifically?
Yeah, well, I think Jake's doing a really good job. Nick Saban talks constantly about winning the team. Winning the team. Last year, when Blake Sims won the team, that's when he knew that he was his guy in the second scrimmage of the year. I felt like last week, Jake Coker won the team. I really do. And you could kind of notice it with him running on the sideline and lowering his shoulder. Now, I wouldn't advise leading with your throwing shoulder against 250-pound guy. It's just a little scary to me. It makes me a little hesitant. But I did see the response on the sideline by his teammates, and I think that cannot go unnoticed. I think he's done a really nice job the last few weeks, and he's very comfortable. He's starting to really gain some confidence, which is imperative in this position. And, I think his talent is starting to come to the forefront a little bit more because he's not thinking quite as much. And he's running, he's using athleticism, and he's only going to continue to get better. And a lot of playing the quarterback position is having your supporting cast playing well, and he's got some guys now that are really stepping up, like Calvin Ridley. Derrick Henry's been a workhorse all year, and I think he's starting to have some faith in some receivers too.
How does Derrick Henry compare to some of the guys?
Derek is, he's a bigger guy, he's a big body. I think he's a very talented back. He does a great job, good nose for the end zone. He can push the pile. You know, obviously I was with some pretty great ones, and Mark Ingram is one of the best football players I've ever seen at any level. I mean, just what he was able to do, how he negotiated defenders, and Trent Richardson obviously just being the beast that he was, and Eddie Lacy. You know, it's still crazy that he was on that team as well. And I was around some really special ones. I think Derek would rate right up there at the top with all of them. It's definitely in the conversation, and his talent and what he's done from a production standpoint over the course of his whole career, not just in college but in high school as well, is relatively unmatched.
As a player and now as an analyst, what has made Coach Saban so successful that he, even when they say this may be a down year, clearly it's not a down year?
No, what's a down year? I mean, you know, you lose in 2010 2 games by combined 4 points. You're 4 points away essentially from maybe winning another national championship. 6 out of the last 7 years, if there was a 14 playoff in place, Alabama would have been in the 14 playoff. It's pretty amazing when you think about the level of consistency. But I think one thing that I've really learned from him, and I think I've understood it a little bit more as I've gotten removed from the program, is just how Alabama every single week, it seems like they do on occasion beat themselves and make mistakes. Everybody does. That's understandable. But the mistakes are corrected the following week. And I think that's one thing that I've always noticed. They always feel like they never make the same mistake twice, it seems like. And I think his detail-oriented nature, his ability to focus on the task at hand, and then also with a clear thought as to what's coming. He always has an answer for what the team might throw at you, and he already has an adjustment for the adjustment that he expects them to make. And I think there's something to be said for that. He plans for everything. He's an unbelievable strategist, and I'm just very grateful to have had the opportunity to play for him.
How many plays
That's the way we'll go about it. So quarterback play down in the SEC. Let's go team by team. All right, Texas A&M. Is it down? I would say at very worst it's up just a little bit based on how Kyle Allen was a year ago. I think he's significantly improved. Yeah, he had a tough outing last week, but significantly improved. Brandon Harris at LSU better than what Anthony James was last year. I think Brandon Allen is taking a step forward as well, accuracy. At Missouri, I would say it's not going as well offensively right now, but is that really a reflection on Drew Lock, or is it just a lack of continuity? They've struggled. They've had their running back injured, the offensive line has struggled. They lost a ton of wide receivers, so is that really on the quarterback? I think it's just the offense as a whole is kind of sputtering. I think Josh Dobbs is better from a year ago. I think Dak Prescott is better from a year ago, even though the numbers might not necessarily indicate it, but throwing the football very much in command, but the offensive line has not been quite as good, even though the record, and they're looking at a potential 7-2 start without question if they're able to get a win against Kentucky and then take care of business the next week. So, you know, is it really down? I would say Treon Harris and Will Greer, what they've done at Florida, is better than what Jeff Driscoll was through the first 6-7 games of the season last year. So is it really down? I wouldn't say that it is. I think it's just a perception because you see other conferences, guys like Seth Russell at Baylor and Sharon Boykin, and guys in the Pac-12, Travis Wilson at Utah, who are really coming into their own, and Hogan at East Stanford, who's really doing a nice job over the last 6-7 weeks. I think the perception is that the quarterback play is lacking, but it's really not the reality. It's just a different identity, a different offensive mentality in this conference for the most part, and I wouldn't say it's reflective of who the quarterbacks are at all.
Vanderbilt, Kentucky. We're going team by team.
We can keep going. We can go Georgia. We can go. I mean, we can do it all. Well, I think, you know, obviously quarterbacks are always going to focus. It's just, I mean, you mentioned like the NFL. All we talk about are Rodgers and Brady and Peyton. It's just always quarterbacks are the storyline, and I think that there are some quarterbacks at other schools and in other conferences that are doing an exceptional job, but I don't think it necessarily means that the quarterback play is lacking in this conference. There's still a potential Heisman contender, but the focus this year nationally has been on the running backs for the most part.
Just 2 more questions, guys.
What would you say is kind of the national championship winning, recipe? And does this team have it here at Alabama?
Yeah, I mean, I think you don't know if a team really has what it takes to win a national championship until you're put in a situation in which time and time again you have to play up to expectations. And it's difficult to say whether or not a team has it until they participate in an SEC championship or a clinching, championship in the SEC West or whatever it may be. I think that it absolutely has the makings. This team has done a wonderful job defensively for the entire season. They've really been off the charts. If you look at the one game in which it seems as though they slipped, it would be the Ole Miss game, and that would, Ole Miss was the beneficiary of 5 turnovers. So I would say that this team is absolutely built for the long run. Obviously, there are always situations in which you have to improve, but if you want to start building a team, I think starting it on the defensive line is always a great place to go. And if you look at the teams that have won national championships, defensive line play has always been at a premium. 2009, Marcel Darius, you name it, all over the place. 2010, Auburn, Nick Fairley, several others. 2011, Alabama, obviously a ton of good offensive and defensive linemen. Last year, Ohio State, Joey Bosa and company, a ton of guys that are now playing in the NFL and guys that are back this year. If you want to start somewhere in college football, starting on the defensive line is a real good place to start, and there's no one better in the country on the defensive line than Alabama.
There's tradition with this game with the cigars after you win.
Not allowed to talk about that.
Again,
no, I'm messing with it. Yeah, the cigars. There's great traditions everywhere. I'll talk to you about that a little later.
How much contact do you have with quarterbacks now or any of the guys now?
Not a lot. Last year I played with a few of the guys that were on the team, Justin Fowler and a few others. So it was a little bit closer personally with some of those guys. This year's team, more close with the coaches. I know, gotten to know my center, William Vallejos. He's on the staff. He was last year too, but he's another year wiser now, William is. But I wouldn't say I have a great personal relationship with a lot of the players, but always see him around. I'm here quite a bit. It seems like I feel like I live in Birmingham, even though I live in Charlotte. But this is home. This is a place that means an awful lot to me, and I can't tell you how much I think being removed from the program now, how much you really appreciate having played somewhere now, kind of stepping back from just a fly on the wall, just watching. I'm just very grateful to have played here and just so thrilled to have the opportunity to come back and see all the special people that make this place great.